sales of the wildly popular Mustang and Camaro. So this car was released in late 1969, and it was a brand new design of the Barracuda platform. The earlier version was a little bit smaller, and it wasn't as near as wide, and more importantly, the under-hood configuration was not able to handle the biggest engines that Chrysler Plymouth could put in these cars. So they specifically designed this car to have a giant engine bay, knowing that they wanted to make a high-performance version of the Cuda. And what we see here is our 426 cubic inch Hemi engine with the giant valve covers over the hemispherical cylinder head design, which was a very, very wide engine requiring a full-width engine compartment. There are interesting details all over the body of a 1970 Cuda. It's got two round headlights on opposite ends of a very wide grille that is deeply recessed. And if you look closely, you'll see that the turn signals are hidden in the upper part of that grille structure. The grille is divided down the middle, and there's a very thin bumper that goes the whole width. Below the bumper, you see kind of an extended half-moon grille opening for more air intake, and then this one has a pair of driving lights that are situated right in front of that bumper. Many people think that those are the turn signals, but in this case, they're not. The profile is very unique on a Cuda. It's a typical long-nose, short-deck design, but the proportions are really, really nice on this car, and there's a lot of different details that are pretty advanced for 1970. For example, the bumpers in the front and the rear are both tucked in nicely, and they conform to the shape of the car. Now, this was before the federally mandated 5-mile-an-hour crash bumpers that we all got used to in the 70s, so the bumpers back in the late 60s could still be very small and light-looking like they are in this 1970 Cuda. Another interesting detail are the flush-mounted door handles. These almost add kind of a European flair to the car without a big chrome thing sticking off the side to break up the flowing line of the car. The roof line is very light on these cars as well. The A-pillar is very thin, there's no vent window to break up the silhouette, and the rear quarter window is a nice accent. It's just a small little window leading into that big B-pillar. And our car is wearing a black vinyl top, which is an option on these cars, but it's one of the few cars where a vinyl top looks just as natural as a painted steel hardtop. When these cars hit the street in 1969, many reviewers thought the design was miles ahead of the Camaro and Mustang competition, but one thing's for sure, they definitely still look fresh today. This one was built on November 8th, 1969, and it features option code VX6, which is the black side stripes. It's got an optional black vinyl top. There's a Music Master AM radio inside, but we think the best option is the 426 Hemi under the hood. When it comes to muscle car engines, few are as mythical as the 426 Hemi, and for good reason. The Hemi engine from Chrysler basically grew out of the need to win races. The Hemi design was around since the mid-50s, but by the early 1960s, Chrysler engineers were trying to build these engines to win races in NASCAR and in drag racing. Those were known as the race Hemis, and by 1966, the street Hemi came out, which is what we see here today in this 1970 Hemi Cuda. The bottom end is the basic big block V8, but the magic happens when they bolt on the hemispherical design cylinder heads, which have a free flow design allowing free breathing of both the intake and the exhaust valve. It put the spark plug right in the middle so that when it ignited the air-fuel ratio, these things had a tremendous volumetric efficiency and made fantastic power. One of the reasons why these cars didn't sell that much is because the Hemi engine option was a very expensive add-on. These cars came with a 383 cubic inch engine making 335 horsepower as the base V8 engine, which really wasn't that bad, but if you wanted to step up to the big 426 Hemi, you had to spend some extra cash, to the tune of about $871. And in 1970, that equates to well over $5,000 in 2015 dollars. So you can see why a lot of people didn't really want to spring for it, because it added quite a bit to the bottom line. And another element of the Hemi folklore is that these engines were never built past their prime. These were taken out of production at the end of the 1971 model year, and they were never subject to the increased smog regulation equipment, so we never saw a weak, detuned version of the mighty 426 Hemi. These things made 425 horsepower when they first came out, and they made 425 horsepower on the last day of their production. A lot of time has passed since 1970 when this car was new, so it's important to verify the options and history because that adds significantly to the car's value. And this particular one was documented by Mopar expert Galen Govier and can be found today in his Mopar registry. It's kind of funny to think that this car was such a hard sell back in 1970, and today these are really, really hard to buy. It's a stellar example of a Hemi Cuda, and it's one of the many in the Brothers collection. I think these things came in like 22 different colors. Which one is your favorite? Let us know on our website.